Hey everyone, Megan here. I am reading LM Montgomery and War, edited by Andrea Mackenzie and Jane Ledwell. So LM Montgomery is, of course, the author of Anne of Green Gables, as well as many other novels, short stories, and poems. So, what a lot of people don't know about LM Montgomery is that she wrote a lot about war in her novels, in her letters, and in her journals. So I've read all of her novels, I've read hundreds of her short stories, and I've read quite a bit of her journals now. And yeah, her writing is just saturated in war literature, in creating this war literature. So four major conflicts affected Montgomery's life, or Maud's life, as she preferred to be called. So in 1885, she was born in 1874. Her father fought in the Northwest Resistance in 1885, and so there were months when she didn't know whether her father was living or dead because he was out west, that's where he lived, and she lived in Prince Edward Island. So there were months where she didn't know if he was living or dead. She knew that some had been killed. She didn't know if her father was one of them. The second conflict was the South African War, or it used to be known as the Boer War. And that was 1898 to 1901 or 2, something like that. So it was the British in South Africa, and Canada fought alongside with the British. And these first two conflicts, Montgomery is unflinchingly on the side of the Canadian government. Yeah, she's extremely patriotic, and she is not a pacifist at all. She is like we fight this war for our country. Like, she is very much coming from that place. The second conflict was, of course, World War I, and Rilla of Ingleside, the last book in the Anne of Green Gables series, is all about World War I. It is, and I've read that novel countless times. I even helped adapt it for the stage. I produced, marketed it, and starred in it as Rilla. And yeah, it's funny. When I read her journals are literally word for word in Rilla. Like, it's like she took whole chunks out of her journal and put it in Rilla of Ingleside. So much of it is real. Yeah, and of course the last conflict that affected Montgomery's life was the Second World War. She died in 1942 at the height of World War II. And one thing that a lot of people don't know, which is quite sad, is that LM Montgomery, she finished her manuscript on a new novel which eventually would be called The Blythes Are Quoted, which takes place during World War II. It's very sad and depressing, and disillusioned with the world and with the causes that they were fighting for. So she wrote this manuscript, she dropped it off, and the next day she was found dead. And some say that it was an accidental drug overdose, and some people say it was a suicide. It was a drug overdose. And looking at the facts, they don't know for sure. It very easily could have been an accidental death, but from her journals, she talks about death, and it very easily could have been a suicide. So it's very sad. Yeah, LM Montgomery suffered from mental illness for a long time, and I wish she would have known what happened. I wish she would have known that the war did end, and that Hitler was defeated, and that good things happened after World War II. It's just too bad she never saw that. One thing that I didn't realize, I'm just reading the introduction by the editors, Andrea Mackenzie and Jane Ledwell, and I did not realize how LM Montgomery is not taken seriously as a war author. She's not in our country, and I'm hoping that this book has changed some things. This book came out in 2017. So this book actually came out after I produced and starred in Rilla of the Island, which was the adaptation that I did of Rilla of Ingleside. So this book wasn't in existence when I did that show. So I'm like, oh, that would have been so interesting to read this book and then produce my show. She's not taken seriously, LM Montgomery. She isn't even really, there's a side of the argument that says only war literature that is written by people who fought, only by men who were soldiers in World War I, does the war literature count, like the Great War literature. And I think some of that viewpoint is changing, but even now, like, LM Montgomery isn't included in a lot of those, you know, now that it's been 100 years since the war finished, there's all these like lists of like World War I books you have to read, and Rilla of Ingleside, LM Montgomery's works are never on that list, which is a shame because let's see if I can get this right. Rilla of Ingleside is the only Canadian contemporary female World War I novel or work of literature at all. So it's the only novel written by a woman during World War I about World War I in Canada. The only one. They also talk in this introduction about Testament of Youth, which was by Vera Brittain, so a woman who lived during World War I. She published this book in 1933, and that is a British perspective on World War I, whereas LM Montgomery offers a different perspective as a Canadian. So where Vera Brittain, she became a pacifist after World War I, and she was saying it was a pointless bloodbath. So that's one viewpoint. It's a pointless bloodbath, whereas the Canadian viewpoint is a little bit more ambiguous or nuanced, where there's more purpose to the war. But you know, by the time LM Montgomery died, she was of the mindset that the war was a pointless bloodbath. So that's very sad. Another viewpoint about the war is that the war is what made Canada like a matured country, which is sad because it's like we don't want to look at the war as like, oh, well, good thing the war happened because now Canada is a mature country. Like, that is not okay. The war was an awful, horrible thing, and if anything good could come out of it, one good thing was that it did mature Canada as a country. We were no longer just, you know, Britain's little child, Britain's little kid who wouldn't leave the nest. Now we were a fully grown country. Yeah, so I'm finding this very interesting. These illustrations, I love these illustrations. Let's see, they're not really illustrations. They're different, like, paintings and things. Let me show you. So this is the, that's the cover of the first edition of Rilla of Ingleside, and actually, after closing of Rilla of the Island, which was my show, I got a postcard with this cover on it from a stranger who saw the show and was like, I loved it, thank you so much for doing this. So that was really exciting. And then, like, I just love, like, look at how beautiful that is. A bit of propaganda there, but it's beautiful propaganda. It has to be beautiful, though, to you know, work. Let me see here. Okay, I love this picture. This is Carl Montgomery. So that is, Carl is LM Montgomery's half-brother. I actually met a descendant totally by chance of his. I was dressed up as a roving historical character, and I kept looking like Anne of Green Gables, and I kept having people telling me I looked like Anne of Green Gables, but I was playing a different character, so I kept like trying to make myself not look like Anne of Green Gables, and then this woman comes up to me and she's like, you look like Anne of Green Gables. And I said, oh, I love Anne of Green Gables. And I was totally honest about that. But I said, oh, my name is actually this. And she went, oh, did you know LM Montgomery is actually an ancestor of mine? And I was like, oh, like she said, I'm related to LM Montgomery's family. So I was like, that is so cool. And this is Stewart Mcdonald. That's LM Montgomery's younger son, who eventually fought in World War II. And that was one thing that was really upsetting LM Montgomery at the end of her life. I also really like, there's some really fun covers of Rilla of Ingleside, and like that story is so close to my heart since I grew up on it, basically, and then since I played Rilla and spent so much time in that book. Here's one cover. It says Rilla of Ingleside by the author of Anne of Green Gables, and so this one is a later edition. It came out in 1924, whereas Rilla of Ingleside came out in 1920. Let's see, this one's kind of fun. Rilla of Ingleside. This is the edition that came out in 1947. That's very dramatic with her lipstick and all that stuff. It came out, that would have been after World War II, so that might have had a resurgence after then as well. This is the 1938 version. Rilla of Ingleside, there she is, waving her soldier lover off as he goes, and baby Jims is in the soup tureen on the spine, trying not to give too many spoilers for Rilla of Ingleside. And then this cover for, let's see, is it a Swedish cover. It says Lilla Marila. I don't think that's how you pronounce it, but it's fun to say it like that. So we've got a soldier in the background with a young woman in the front. Yeah, all these romanticized versions. Then here's the 50s version. A girl with a very 50s look with some flowers looking all sweet and perfect and lovely. May you be filled with peace, hope, love, and joy. Yeah, take care, everyone. Bye.